I think these are the types of programs that are really going to help mobilise, because if we can overcome these barriers, it makes it easy for business to actually bring this on board. And I'd love to see these type of programs across all the councils. So we could all have solar on our roof, and we can all have LED lights and energy efficiency products. Move, next slide. And financing, I did want to mention this because it's an area people find confusing, and there's been so much development in the area. And I can see why people are confused. Where the low-hanging fruit is with solar, if you know someone that has an SME business, what we're finding in a lot of cases is the payback is 4 to 5 years. So at that level, it makes a lot of sense to actually move solar. With residential, the payback is a bit longer generally, but there are finance opportunities that can make it a lot easier. So for example, you can buy solar through an electricity contract. So they will charge you through that electricity contract price now, and you can get solar put on your roof by paying a particular fixed price for your energy. Or there's leases that you can actually participate in. There are so many different solutions. So if you don't have the money up front, it's no longer the issue that it used to be. There's another product, Melbourne Sustainable Fund, developed, one of the first that developed this product, and it's with LED lights. So for people who don't have the money up front, what they say is, okay, we will give you money over 3 years, but the energy reduction will pay for the actual loan repayments. So it's effectively for free, and then after that, you enjoy the energy reduction. But obviously, be aware, there is a cost to it whenever you are borrowing money, and these types of products will generally have a higher interest rate. So in my view, it's always good to buy up front if you can, but if you can't, the option is there and it makes economic sense. So another new product I'd like to bring to your attention, because the Victorian government are about to bring this in, and it's already in the city of Melbourne, and I understand it's going to be brought in by this government. I did hear this month, but I'm not sure if that's happened yet. But they're called environmental upgrade agreements. Now these are going to be special, and this is something you will be able to do in your council area. What it is if you have an SME or have a commercial building, if you meet the criteria, you'll be able to get loans through council rates. See how I was talking to you about all these innovations that are developing? It'll be through the rate system. So where that's positive is it's a really low cost of interest normally, but also the term of the loan can increase. So where a bank might say to you, oh, well, I'll only offer you for 5 years, you might be able to get a loan from a bank for 15 years. That's the difference. So all of a sudden, if you have a look, the most important figures here, net benefits per tonne, shows that with the environmental upgrade agreements, it's cash flow positive in the first year. So see how this makes sense? With all the businesses that are having trouble with cash flow, it's tough economic times, and you can enter into a program like this and be cash flow positive in the first year. So that your council will have to approve this and participate. So I do urge you to try and gain support from your council, because this is a really good product offering if we can get this off the ground. What I wanted to share with you was the top 8 some current smart ideas. So LEDs, both for business and residential, they make sense now today. There's no reason why we shouldn't all have LED lights. Quality carbon offsets, so some of those international programs like World Vision, aren't they great? But the other new opportunities for residentials is there's deductible green power that's now available, so you can get more dollars for your buck as well. Buy solar PV, particularly if you're an SME business. Come on, 4 to 5 years. If you're a business that meets that particular outcome, it makes sense. The innovative finance solutions. If you don't have the money up front, there are opportunities there. Now, the Emission Reduction Fund is the Abbott government carbon scheme, which hasn't been approved yet. But if it is, one of the positives of it is there will be carbon that will be able to be claimed for energy efficiency credits. So it might be that if you're doing a building retrofit, putting in LED lights, there could in fact be carbon credits that can be generated from it. Now clearly, I'm not supportive of all the current government's policy, but I think that we should make the most out of the opportunities that do exist. Energy Umpire. This is a great new product that I've just recently seen. It is the first real comparative of energy prices of retailers that I've seen in the market. So you send them your energy bill and they will show you, give you a summary of how much of a reduction that is to what you're currently paying. So if you save more, perhaps that money you can put into energy efficient products. Smart meters, understanding where you're using your energy. And there's now flexible pricing which the government has offered, which is another innovation in order to save energy costs. And support carbon pricing. Yeah, I'm a real proponent for renewable energy, Kelly, so keep going with the good work. I'm optimistic that the renewable energy target is looking positive at this stage, and so keep going because we can't stop. But carbon pricing is very important, and I'm also involved in an initiative called Business for a Clean Economy. So if you are a business and you want to support a carbon price, please go on the website and sign up. So it is possible to save the world and save money. Isn't that wonderful? And I hope you've learnt something today, and I'd love to hear that people have taken some action, done something with LED lights, done something with solar, because the opportunity is there. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share my thoughts with you tonight.
Plus 4 degrees, David, what does plus 4 degrees really mean? You know, well, perhaps should I say, is plus 2 degrees safe?
Plus 2 degrees isn't safe because at plus 1 degree you've already had Black Saturday bushfires, record high temperatures in Melbourne and Sydney and in many places. There are already major adverse impacts from climate change with plus 1 degree. Plus 2 degrees gives a better than 50-50 chance of 7 metres of sea level rise, and that puts many major cities in developing countries around the world underwater. The last time the planet was 2 degrees warmer, there was 25 metres of sea level rise over a long period. So 4 degrees is a different planet. We haven't lived, human society hasn't experienced 4 degrees of warming, and 4 degrees is really an underestimate. I like to say that most people aren't fish, and that's pretty obvious to most people, but 4 degrees of global warming is the average of the land temperature and the ocean temperature. Most people don't live in the ocean. So actually land temperatures warm up substantially more than the ocean temperature, 50% more than the ocean, 25% more than the global average. So we're really talking at 4 degrees global warming, actually 5 degrees of land warming, and that means that inland areas where a lot of the agriculture is even warmer still. So we're talking about dramatically higher temperatures, which we haven't experienced on this planet, as I said, for 50 million years.
Now we need to give...
Not a nice place.
Now we need to give these disciples some answers to the hard questions. What about the other argument that, oh, but hang on, Australia only emits about 1.4% of global emissions? What's a proportionate response from Australia?
So Australia's only emits 1.4% of global emissions, but Australia only has 0.3% of global population. So we're actually emitting 5 times more than a proportionate share of global emissions. That's why Joe Hockey is completely wrong when he says that Australian emissions are consistent with the OECD average. Actually, no. Australian emissions are equal highest amongst the OECD countries, amongst the developed countries in the world. Depending on exactly which year you put, we're higher than the United States or about the same as the United States. It is clear that Australia is making a disproportionate contribution to climate change for its population. That's because we have some of the least efficient electricity production systems in the world. China has more efficient electricity generation, produces less carbon emissions per gigawatt hour of electricity, and unfortunately in Victoria we use brown coal to produce electricity. The only thing worse is peat, and the Irish gave up on that a long time ago.
Yeah, actually cow pats are more efficient, aren't they, than brown coal? But anyway, no, hang on. Do you want to make a comment?
Just one quick comment.
Yeah.
That 1.5% is without taking into account the amount of emissions that we export to other countries to burn. And considering we all have the same atmosphere, it's pretty, irresponsible to put those emissions onto another country.
Now, Kelly, I've got a question for you. It's interesting, I'm sitting here reflecting, when David was doing his degree, I was actually teaching in a degree course in environmental science education in 1975. I reckon you were still an undergrad, right? Okay. So, now, here's another interesting fact for you all. You can take this to your Liberal candidate for the election. Who can remember who was the federal Liberal leader in 1990? No? Andrew Peacock. And can anybody tell me what Liberal Party policy was on Australia's emissions in 1990? Not you. Did you know that the Liberal Party in opposition had an emissions reduction policy? It was 20% reduction in Australia's emissions by the year 2000. Now, below 1990 levels, which would have been a significant reduction. So my question for you, Kelly, given that I was teaching in environmental science and I learned about the greenhouse effect in 1972 when David was still finishing school here, what would you have rather we had done? My son's your age. What did we get wrong?
I think that with our society, I was born in 1990, I think that our society distrusts scientists. Sorry. But I think that the information that they have is too inconvenient for us to fit into our economic business growth model. And it's pretty scary to come to terms with that. So I think that I would have rather we listened to the science back then, what it was telling us, but it was pretty stuck to our 20% reduction target by 2000. I didn't even know that was a thing. This is great.
Well, I guess that's my point, though, and this is the question for all of you. If we had listened, Andrew Peacock responded to the 1987 Villach Agreement in Austria, which was a precautionary response for all nations, was a 20% reduction as soon as possible. So in opposition, Peacock accepted the science, and that's what the policy was. Why are we still discussing this now?
I think because there's too many vested interests who have realised that it goes against their economic development model, i.e. the coal industry and the whole fossil fuel industry that have run an avid campaign against climate action, have, moved us away from developing the electric car, have, made sure that solar panels don't get any rebates until very recently, and have still kept on getting all the money from the government to compensate the work that they do. And I think that their voice is really powerful because they have a lot of money, and the power of people hasn't started gaining much momentum until recent.
Okay.
And the power of the people defines what our leaders do.
Right. Now, Jennifer, about 10 days ago, the Rockefeller Brothers Foundation divested $50 billion in oil assets. ANU's fighting a little bit of a battle with the Treasurer as well, but David's going to correct the Treasurer again, no doubt on that. Glasgow University, Stanford University, which is probably much more wealthy than ANU, all divesting their coal assets. What's going on globally in that sort of big picture economics that might turn the tide?
I think globally there is now an acknowledgement of the risks of investing in high polluting assets. It's an investor risk, and even in Australia there's a group called the Investor Group for Climate Change that do some really good work, and there's been a lot of advocacy done even with our super funds here we can't be overweight on carbon-heavy assets. I still think we've got a lot to learn in this country, though, in terms of where the proportion of our super fund money goes to. But I am now seeing a real trend, and new financial products like green bonds that are investing in helping transform economies and going low carbon. And going back to your question, also around, you know, if we had gone 20% back in 1990, it's also the tremendous opportunity it would have brought for us, because what we've learned from Germany and what we've learned from China is if you have deep cuts within your economy, you learn a lot by doing, and you develop their technology. This is why Germany is one of the leaders in technology in the world. And this is why, one of the reasons why China is reducing emissions, because they want to become the best in the world in developing clean technology, because they see it as an economic opportunity. We would have been in a much better economic position now. And what concerns me is the lack of consistent vision on the need to move low carbon will place this country at significant risk. I am concerned about the future in Australia if we keep going down this path.
And of course, David and I, being as old as we are, can recall that when we were both, well, when I was an undergraduate even, that indeed Australia led the world in solar research in the 60s and 70s at ANU and University of New South Wales, and they're still very, very good, of course. Now, another question, Jennifer, I want you to be a little bit speculative now, and Kelly talked about the big four banks investing in Abbott Point and the Galilee Basin. Stanford University has just done some research which suggests that of the fossil fuel companies around the world, that 50% of their valuation indeed is in the stuff that's still in the ground. So that if we actually do manage to achieve a 2-degree guardrail, that is, leave it there, as David suggests, the companies have no value, which is the reason that they're fighting so hard against moving. The question is, would NAB, ANZ, Commonwealth or Westpac even contemplate funding big infrastructure projects in Queensland, given that Rabo and Deutsche Bank and Societe Generale and HSBC have knocked them back, and they're all trying to protect their international reputations in things like CDP?
It's a good point, and what you find even in the US, a lot of banks have not supported coal investment for a very, very long time. I think the banks have responded in Australia. In some areas, I think they're doing some really, really positive stuff. And generally, most of them have moved away from investment in coal generation plants. So I think there has been a trend to move away from it. But I think having someone like Kelly keeping a check on them and actually ensuring that they're made accountable is actually really important as well. We need groups like Kelly's group that do make these organisations accountable, because I think that is what does make a difference. But I have worked in the banking industry, and I've been very inspired by some of the very positive people in the bank that are doing great things environmentally. Yes, we still have a long way to go.
She still doesn't have a clear position on renewable energy, except for that she now realises that Tasmania is a really good potential hub for renewable energy development. There's been a lot of good response within Greens and the Labor Party, who are standing strong on 41,000 gigawatt hours of renewable energy in our grid, with a lot of the politicians in the key areas with high youth unemployment being very supportive, because they know that young people have an important role to play in building this renewable energy future that we have in sight. But then there's people like your Joe Hockeys, who think that wind turbines are light on the landscape, and Tony Allen thinks that coal is good for humanity, so I don't think he'll be supporting a strong grant anytime soon. But the good news is that they're probably not going to support Dick Warburton's dodgy renewable.
I think the renewable energy generators are fairly confident that even Joe Hockey understands the economics that they've been putting forward on the value of renewables, keeping energy prices down. Now, I've just had a word to Tim. We can actually take, we've finished our presentations a little bit late, so I'm assuming that we're going to be able to take about 30 minutes of questions. We've had about 15 minutes of a little bit of discussion on the panel, so it leaves us about 15 minutes of questions from the floor. I'm intending to wrap up at about 9:20, about 20 minutes later than that.
councils are only interested in what's going on in KC and what's going in here, and the Mornington Shire, How, with all this human, with all these computers, how can we, or you think that we can get more communication, because we're getting all this rubbish down the other anyway? What do you think needs to be done?
I'm actually having breakfast with the CEO of Mornington Peninsula Shire tomorrow morning, so I'll raise your question with him then too.
I'm happy to develop a strategic plan for them, so...
Sorry?
I'm happy to develop a strategic plan for them.
Yeah, at the moment they don't know the last war's over, can you?
But look, I think one thing that the City of Yarra did was develop Yarra Energy Foundation, which I think is a good idea, because its focus is just in terms of engagement with the community, that is businesses and residents.
Let me just say, I'm speaking at Main Ridge Community Hall, Saturday, 11 o'clock. Tell the councillors to come along.
Mate, I
Main
write,
Ridge in
I write letters all over the world. I've asked the Minister, I've got a letter from the Minister for Climate Change in Melbourne. In my time, I write letters to Prince Charles and the rest of it, and I think I'm there. But until you stop, you know, everybody seems to be worried about Australia. I mean, and I know what's going on 15,000 miles away, right? And when you got this is our department, that's our department, and you know, and nobody seems to be bothered. And you got.
David, a quick comment on Arctic ice while we're getting the microphone to this lady on the one there.
One here.
And one here, yeah.
Yeah, it'll only take a minute.